Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the biggest questions out there. Where did all of this come from? We're going to walk through a classic line of reasoning called the Kalām Cosmological Argument. It's a step-by-step logical case for a first cause, and it all kicks off with a puzzle about the past.
So just stop and think about that for a second. Could the chain of events, the moments that led to right now, just stretch backward forever with no beginning? That's the core puzzle we're going to try to solve together, using nothing but logic.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the mind-bending idea of infinity. Then we'll see how that applies to a chain of causes. That's going to lead us straight to a first cause. And finally, we'll explore what logic alone can tell us about what that first cause might be like. All right, let's jump right in. To figure out if the past can go on forever, we first have to get our heads around the very strange and kinda paradoxical concept of infinity itself. To make this less abstract, let's try a little thought experiment. Just picture a simple 12-inch stick. We're not worried about atoms or anything physical, just the pure idea of its length. Now imagine you cut that stick right in half. You've got two 6-inch pieces. You cut those halves, now you have four 3-inch pieces. You see where this is going, right? You could, in theory, just keep cutting and cutting, getting more and more pieces that are smaller and smaller. But here is the real philosophical puzzle. Could you ever actually finish the job? Could you make an infinite number of cuts, one after the other, and end up holding a completed infinite set of little pieces? And according to this line of reasoning, the answer is a hard no. You can't. You can imagine the process going on forever, but you can never actually get there and hold the finished product. And that's the key takeaway here. A completed or actual infinity cannot exist in reality. It's a concept, not something you can actually build by adding one more piece and one more forever. If you think that's weird, check this out. It's another famous paradox called Hilbert's Hotel, and it illustrates the same exact problem. So, imagine a hotel with an infinite number of rooms. And tonight, the no vacancy sign is lit because every single one of those infinite rooms is occupied. The hotel is totally, completely full. Then, a new guest walks up to the front desk and asks for a room. Now, if the hotel is full, it's full, right? No space. But with an infinite hotel, the manager just asks the guest in room 1 to move to room 2, the guest in room 2 to move to room 3, and so on, shifting everyone down the line infinitely. And just like that, poof, room 1 is now empty for the new guest. This reveals the absurdity. How can something be full but also have room for more? It shows that an actual infinity just leads to these logical contradictions if you try to make it exist in the real world. Okay, so let's hang on to that idea that a real completed infinity is a logical mess. Now let's apply that very same thinking to the real world, specifically to the chain of causes and effects that makes up the history of our universe. I mean, just look at anything around you, like your laptop or your phone. It didn't just pop into existence out of nowhere. It had a cause, actually a whole web of causes. The factory that assembled it, the people who designed it, the raw materials they dug up, everything has a cause. And of course, it doesn't stop there. Each of those causes had its own cause. The factory was built by construction workers who were born to their parents, who were born to their parents, and we can trace this chain of what caused that backwards through time. This leaves us with basically two possibilities for the history of the entire universe. Either this chain of causes goes back forever with no beginning at all, that's what we call an infinite past, or the chain had to start somewhere, a finite past. And here is the crucial connection. If the past were truly infinite, it would mean that an infinite number of events have already passed, one after another, to get us to this moment right now. That would be an actually completed infinity. The very same thing that the stick and the hotel paradoxes showed was impossible. You can't cross an infinite finish line by taking one step at a time. So, if an infinite series of past events is logically impossible, what does that leave us with? Well, this leads to a really powerful conclusion. In fact, according to this argument, it's the only conclusion left standing. If the chain of causes can't go back forever, it has to be finite. It's as simple as that. And if the past is finite, well, that means the whole shebang, the entire chain of cause and effect, had to have a beginning. There must have been a first domino to fall, a cause that started the entire sequence. There must have been a first cause. And really think about what that means. If this is the first cause, then by its very definition, it could not have been caused by anything that came before it. It has to be, by its nature, uncaused. Okay, so we've followed the logic all the way to this idea of an uncaused first cause. But what is it? What can pure logic alone tell us about its nature? This is where the argument that's really fascinating. Well, for starters, it must exist outside of time and space, because time and space are part of the universe it created. It can't be physical because anything physical has properties, a specific size, a specific material, which just begs the question, well, what caused it to have these properties and not some others? To be truly uncaused, it must be non-physical, and that also means it must be unchanging, since change is something that happens within time.
And it doesn't stop there. Logic suggests it must be singular. How could you have two of something with no physical boundaries or attributes to tell them apart? It must also have necessary existence, meaning it couldn't have not existed, because there was nothing before it to cause it to either exist or not exist. And finally, its first act, the act of creation, must have come from pure free will, because with nothing before it, nothing could have forced or compelled it to act. The argument's final step is about purpose. If this first cause is unchanging and complete, it can't gain anything from creating a universe. It can't be improved, it doesn't get a benefit. So, by a process of elimination, if the act of creation had any purpose at all, that purpose couldn't have been for the creator. The only other possibility is that it was for the benefit of the creation itself. So let's recap the entire logical flow one last time. The argument goes, an actual completed infinity is a logical contradiction in the real world. An infinite past would be just that, an actual infinity of past events, so it's impossible. Therefore, the universe must have a finite past, which means it had a beginning, and that beginning logically requires a first cause that is uncaused, timeless, non-physical, unchanging, and which acted on its own free will. Now, whether you find this whole line of reasoning compelling or not, it's an incredible logical journey. It takes us from a simple thought experiment about a stick all the way to the very nature of existence. And it leaves us all with a final, profound question to ponder. If this argument does hold, and the universe was indeed created for the benefit of the creation, what could that benefit, that purpose, possibly be?